stories still. A few minutes go in the open field, and our eyes are adjusted so we can see the targets and backdrop very well. Suddenly one of the targets closest to the woods falls off its stand. Some of the kids gasp, or start crying. Head archery guy goes to investigate. Puts it back on its stand and sits down in the grass between the group and the targets. Stories continue. Suddenly 2 more targets fall over on the other side of the target line. Archery guy tells everyone that the hike is over, that they should go back to their campsites. Everyone gets up. I'm helping make sure everyone knows where they are going as we make our way across the field. I'm hanging out near the back of the group, still in view of the archery range. Suddenly 7 targets simultaneously fall over. Older camper in the back of the group tells everyone to run and they're now sprinting away from the range. I hang back with the staff and think to myself that the wind must have been responsible for this. Pause again. I spent the next couple weeks, and years, of my time working in the archery/rifle area, and this experience really stands out as the point when I realized something paranormal was at play. The morning after this happened I was still trying to come up for an explanation for the owl and the target thing. I figured it was a coincidence. That we were in the owl's hunting territory or something. And that the wind was able to push over the targets, or the archery dude had some sort of rope rigged around them so that he could pull them over and scare the campers. Looking back, these explanations were my younger self trying to dismiss the possibility that paranormal things do occur. Because coming to that understanding is a very hard truth to bear. Real-life Annabelle doll in her cage. Tiger pelt. Eyes followed you. There was legitimately one camera angle where the eyes were looking right at the camera, and a completely different camera angle the eyes were still looking right at the camera. Real Necronomicon. Real Wiccan books. 14-foot tall papier-mâché satanic effigy found in the woods near Dudleytown. This one creeped the fuck out of one of the staff for years. Skulls and shit that had been used for ceremonies. Anyways, TLDR, this guy was way into the /x/ stuff way before /x/ existed. Back to the story around the campfire. New staff asks what Ted thinks causes the occurrences up there. He says that depends on your interpretive framework, i.e. the natives would have called it bad spirits, others call it ghosts or whatever, and that Wiccan and other occultic frameworks have exact terminology for this stuff. Says to call it whatever you want, but know that there is generally an evil force in the area, especially around one particular foundation in the ruins. Younger staff want to have him lead a hike up there so he can tell us his own stories. He laughs again. I don't go up there at night anymore. Younger staff asks why. He begins telling another story, occurred in early 2000s. Very similar night to tonight. New staff want to go up to the area without any campers but want one of the elders who had experience to be their guide. Bunch of first-year staff start hiking up the trail. Simultaneously, 2 of the older staff, let's call them Will and Dave, think it would be funny to take the back part of the trail, get to the village before the other group, and scare the new staff. The trail loops around, and the ruins are at the far end. The path normally from the archery area was way closer to the ruins than the other end that looped around to the pond, but Dave taught hiking and thus knew the trail. They embark and try to hustle along the trail to beat the other group. Back to Ted and the new staff, who are making their way up to the ruins. Ted in front, walking along, and hears an owl make one call. Immediately feels as if something is wrong. Keeps going. Owl hoots twice. Ted's spooky senses are kicking in. Owl hoots again, way closer, and Ted stops the group dead in their tracks. Huge bird suddenly swoops down from the trees and flies inches in front of Ted's face. He turns around and begins getting the fuck out of there. Rest of the group is left shocked, as their guide just left them and is now running the other direction in the pitch dark. They all run out of the woods. Back to Will and Dave. They kept a good pace but then hit a patch of mountain laurel like pick related. Dave swears the trail is supposed to go this direction. They start pushing and hacking their way through the brush. Will drops his knife somewhere. They keep going in as straight a line as possible. They end up in a clearing among the laurel. Will's pocket knife is laying on the ground in front of them. At this point they are panicking. Early 2000s, didn't really have great cell service. Barely managed to get a call through to the camp office explaining that they are very lost. Office clerk decides to sound one of the unused siren tones. We had sirens for fire and lost bather emergencies, and did drills weekly. Will and Dave turn directly towards the faint sound of the siren and start hacking their way through. It takes them hours to get through. Loop trail was normally 30 minutes long. They admin staff wake up the next morning and the whole sequence of events was so strange they felt as if it was a dream. Cuts and scrapes all over their bodies say otherwise. So Ted finishes telling us this story around the fire. Knew that Will was a real guy. Met him in my first year as a camper and ran the archery area before my boss. Go to my boss, let's call him Eric, same guy who had been running the weekly hike for years. Ask him if this story is true. Tells me it is. They will had told it to him when he first started working there. Tells me he's had his own experiences being chased out of the woods by the owls. I ask him about the night with the targets, whether he had done anything to rig the targets to fall over. Says no way, and even so, no rope could have pulled the targets over uniformly and simultaneously like that. Explains how that particular hike still haunts him, how he legitimately feared for the safety of the campers on the hike. Had never seen anything like that in his 7 years working there. At this point I had already started to understand that the night with the targets was legit. Ask him about the stories we tell the kids, if a group of scouts actually died on camp property in the 30s. He suddenly turns very serious. Opens the archery shed, pulls out a printed scan of an old local newspaper from 1934. Talks about an unknown plague outbreak in our camp. Says 14 kids died but disease was being contained. I read the article. Eric turns to me and explains that the group of scouts were literally found dead in their sleeping bags with no known cause of death. Unknown disease was a combination of the limited medical understanding at the time as well as to cover up that these deaths were very paranormal. I realized they weren't kidding about the cover-up. And that the older staff took the hike so seriously because they were convinced that these hikes could get really dangerous if we didn't respect the forest and listen to warnings that we were not welcome. At this point I had gotten close to Ted, and he had shown me his photo album and described his various experiences around New England. Some of the stories he shared from Lorraine Warren were really strange but aren't super relevant to this story. At the beginning of the next summer, I'm in charge of the archery area. Second in command for the hikes, guy who ran the program now was studying to become a priest, which unironically may have helped LOL. I talked to Ted about what I should look out for. He explains that the owls are legit, but other things that we sometimes turned around for, spider webs across the trail, newly fallen branches, probably weren't. He explains that instinct is the most important indicator, and that some people are more attuned / more capable of feeling the presence of this kind of phenomena. Explains that's a lot of why Lorraine took him on as a pseudo-apprentice, since, in her mind, he was exhibiting a high degree of awareness for this kind of spooky shit. Tell him the story about getting a really nervous feeling right before the tree fell in front of our group, like I wasn't welcome, from 28186456. He confirms that is the exact kind of instinct he is referring to, and that it is often independent of fear. Pause again. Before you believe in psychic bullshit and you're talking like you are the nobody. Shut up, LARPer. I tried really hard to understand this kind of phenomenon, that some people could be more aware of energy and flux in the world that has yet to be understood in a conscious and mathematical way. I don't know if it has anything to do with the gateway process or perceiving other dimensions or whatever, but I can, with everything that I believe, tell you that some people are able to sense this stuff, and that this premonition or feeling of being unnerved isn't some manifestation of our own fear, nor does it seem to be totally random, like pick related. At this point in my career on staff, I had heard that Ted does something to seal the trail, i.e., keep the spirits in, or however you'd like to rationalize it. But basically it is to make sure that the stuff going on near the ruins didn't affect the rest of the camp. Ask him about it. Says it's real, that he burns sage and performs a specific ritual where he has to run through the entire trail before the sage is done burning. Gets his supplies from a store in Salem. Apparently there are 3 kinds of woo-woo spooky /x/shit type shops in Salem. A. The one for spiritual Stacies who think they can learn magic and witchcraft. B. One that sells what seems like legit stuff. Ted noted that there are a lot of shops that seem legit, and lots of symbols around these shops. However, if he sees a pentagram in the shop, he won't buy from that shop. Apparently not all pentagrams are created equal. You can draw it with 1 point of the star facing up, or 2 points of the star facing up. If you are displaying the upside down star pentagram, you are pledging allegiance to satanic forces. C. One that sells actually legit stuff. These look a lot like B, but have no dark pentagrams anywhere in the shop. If he sees a pentagram in that configuration in the shop, he turns around and immediately leaves. So Ted is explaining to me the ins and outs of shopping in Salem and how how much is real vs mystic horseshit. Ask him how to tell, generally, what is legit. He responds in a way that, to this day, I have